Hi there, everybody. This is Wendy Hernandez, and we are back for another episode of the Family Law Insider podcast. And I have another fantastic guest with us today. Her name is Susan Bremer O'Neill, and Susan is a self-care coach. She is an author, she is a scientist, and she is a survivor. She has an amazing story to share with us about her life and where it's led her to the work that she does helping others today. I'm so happy to have you, Susan. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Wendy. It's my pleasure.
You're welcome. So, Susan, first of all, I read a lot about you before talking with you this morning, and not only do you have a book, but you have an interesting story to tell about your life's journey. And I'm wondering if you could share with everybody the stuff that you went through that kind of led you to where you are today.
Certainly. There is so much. I will try and keep it short, and then you're welcome to ask me any questions you'd like. I'm actually an open book.
Good. I like
that. Yeah. I'll start at the beginning, and I was raised in a military family. My father was in the Army for 20 years, and we moved around a lot. And because of those experiences, we're all shaped by our childhood. Because of those experiences, I really wanted to fit in with people as quickly as I could because I never knew when they would be leaving or we would be leaving. And because of that, then I started to leave my body, and again, I'm going very quickly, but I gravitated towards boys, then men, and to feel grounded really quickly, and then also to escape some of the feelings of having to make friends and remake new friends. I turned to drugs and alcohol. But I looked really good from the outside as I grew up. I'm a smart woman. I graduated with high honors from high school at the age of 16. I went on to study lasers and electronics back in the early 80s. And I graduated again with high honors, the only woman with about 14 men. So on paper I looked really good, but inside I was disconnected and chaotic and angry and confused, and I used the substances for a long time. I like to say that my head was disconnected from my body, my brain from my body, and I survived that way for a long time.
Susan, I'm sorry, can I interrupt you for just a minute and ask you when the disconnection started happening, or when you felt, or when you had an awareness that it was happening?
When
How
I had
old?
I did not have an awareness
You
until
didn't?
not
Okay.
until I became a sober woman in my mid-30s.
Okay.
And it wasn't, I still didn't know, because what happens when we are we don't know. Oftentimes we don't know. And especially for people who have used substances, their maturity stops. And so, honestly, at the age of 33, I think it was, when I became a sober woman, I had the emotional maturity of a 15-year-old, which is about the time that I really got involved with these substances. So I still didn't know, and it wasn't until I became sober, and then through a suggestion from my hairdresser, I discovered this new profession. And it wasn't that I had been looking for this. I was just unhappy. I was a victim,
Okay.
like many of us are.
Yes.
And I was sitting in my hairdresser's chair one day, and I was complaining, which was my habit to do. And he suggested to me that I try this new line of work. And I was looking for something different, and I went into a gentleman's club, a very nice upscale gentleman's club. It wasn't the first one I went into. The first one I went into was not so nice. And what I fell in love with, Wendy, was what the women were wearing. They were wearing evening gowns and jewelry and makeup, and their hair was all done. And I was wearing jeans and a hard hat to work. I was one of the boys.
Yeah.
So I found this area of work that was different, exciting, and I loved the music and the dancing as this dancer. And for a year I did both, and then I could not. And it wasn't until many years later when I really had to take a look at what was happening with me that I started to see there was a disconnection all along. So,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. So why was it? Do you have any idea why your hairdresser suggested that that you do this? What was it you were expressing to him?
Oh man, you ask the tough questions.
I'm sorry. I'm a lawyer. I don't know what to say.
Yeah. Oh, interestingly enough, one of my professions right after high school, I went to school to be a legal secretary.
Oh, you did?
I worked for one lawyer in my life. Yes, I was very young, very naive. My hairdresser suggested this because I was already go-go dancing. I was dancing one night a week. One night a month. In a gay and lesbian bar, actually, in a Walnut Creek area of the San Francisco Bay Area where I live, and that's where I had met him. So he was a little on the out there side, and so yeah, I was complaining about my job, and he'd already seen me dancing, and he said, "Well, hey, you've got a nice body. Why don't you try doing this?" And I went for it.
Yes. How did you get the courage? Did you even think about it? Did you just do it? Like, how would somebody, you're beautiful, obviously, but in a profession where you're a scientist or working with men, hard hats, how would you just say, I'm going to do it? How did you get that courage?
Well, I do go through this in my book, briefly, actually. But I did not have the courage. And it's interesting you said that I'm beautiful. Well, as many women know, and what is pervasive in our culture is it does not matter what someone looks like on the outside. I certainly never felt beautiful, and I never felt smart, and that's what pulled me in so many directions. But when he suggested this, I was curious, and as I said, I was unhappy, and I had already started to realize that maybe I was a victim, and I was empowering myself in certain ways. So I found this nice place, and then I borrowed a video camera from somebody I worked with. I did not tell them why, and I took this camera home and I danced around, and I thought, okay, I look okay. And then, honestly, I think I showed up that first day to audition because I had to audition, never having done this in my life, only having been in a place like this one other time at the age of 34 by now. I showed up because I was also very much a people pleaser, and I said I was going to show up, and I went, and I did it, and typically they had you audition at a very during the day. Hardly no customers were there, and yeah, I looked to the sidelines, and there was the woman that was there to take care of the women working in the clubs. We called her the house mom. And she was kind of like cheering me on, like, you can do it, you can do it. And she told me to smile, and my smile went back. And so I made a little money that first day, and I was kind of hooked. And so much happened there. And that's, in a way, where I connected my brain and my body because of circumstances I had to take a look at.
Okay, and so you say you were hooked that first day. So what is it that hooked you? What did you finally feel in alignment, or I don't know. I'm interested. What hooked you?
Okay. What hooked me, I think, was how fast the money was. I only made $60. It wasn't a lot for a day's work, but it was for like 6-7 minutes dancing around. And it came quickly. It's interesting, I've used the word quickly quite a bit on this interview, but looking back, it was quickly. I don't think it was quickly, but yeah, it was as I said, it was freeing, it was beautiful. I got to dress up. Women like to dress up, and I'd seen all these images, Wendy. And this is one of the reasons why I did write this book. I see all these images and young girls today and women, and we get these messages of how we're supposed to be. Well, I never fit into that as this scientist. suddenly there I was, beautiful and dancing and making quick money, and that's all of that together.
Okay. So you did this about a year, Susan?
Yeah. Well, I worked. No, I worked over 8 years as a dancer.
Oh,
Oh yeah, yeah. I worked for a
okay.
year with both jobs.
Got it. Got it. So you quit the other job after a
Yes.
year.
I oh I mean, I was used to working a regular job, and I had my paid vacation and my sick time and all of the perks that come with that. And here to do this other work, I was completely on my own, and I didn't intend to, but I couldn't keep it up. I was physically exhausted. I worked a few nights a week in the city, and then the day at the laboratory. Yeah, and my health was failing, and so I kept the job that I was having fun at, which opened up a whole other can of worms.
Yes, 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 yes. And and I'm sure that you could go on for weeks. um, and just I guess if you can, if there's some way that you can sum it up in terms of what you found on this 8-year journey and now where you are in terms of helping others discover the same things you did.
What I found is that there is nothing more precious than your body. And it would seem like a no-brainer, right?
Yeah.
But it's not. I think that we live in a society, or maybe the world, where there is an epidemic of disconnect, brain and body. And it was through the experiences that I had that I really had to question what I was doing, because I was putting I was putting myself in unsafe situations, most of it or a lot of it for money. So where are my thoughts on financial security? Where are my thoughts on value? And what I help women with today is, first of all, help them see that they don't have to do anything different to be beautiful. That was the other really important thing I learned. It did not matter. I mean, obviously, in that environment, people come in, men and women alike come in, because there is this stereotype and there is this projection onto the women working there. But to think that these women in the club are completely comfortable with their bodies or their sexuality is a huge misnomer. They're not. And what I learned is that the confidence does come from the inside, and to be safe and appeal to oneself, hence self-appeal, is
Yeah.
where your real confidence and where your happiest life will come from.
Okay. And I couldn't agree more. And I've not been through the journey that you have, but I think I have, and a lot of my friends and the people I see in the office struggle with these thoughts of just self-loathing or self-hatred. I mean, every day, I'm almost constantly. It's a hard pattern to break. I mean, it's something that I fight every day still.
It's super hard, and my journey is nowhere finished by any means. It's better, and really moving. What I talk about a lot now is self-image, because our self-image is formed when we're small, and it really will affect our entire lives. And the changing of that is a transformation. I liken it, and what I use in the book and my work is becoming scientists of self. And
Yes.
really, it's always, always, if something is bothering me, then yes, I can get my feelings hurt, and I can think it's them, but the real healing and the real growth comes when I sit with that feeling of discomfort, or whatever it may be, even if it's a feeling of rejection, and I look a little closer inside myself and say, okay, how did I maybe help spur that on? What is true today versus what is past, and I can let go of all of that.
And I love that idea of being a scientist of the self. I think it's a really great concept, and I love it coming from you because you are a scientist, or you were a scientist. I don't know if you still consider yourself one. I guess you do if you're a scientist of the self.
I do. Matter of fact, I think that I'm a better scientist today than I ever was before. And I mean, life is amazing, and when we're caught up in the the struggles and the challenges of life, sometimes it's hard to see that. But really, we only get one body, and we only get one life, and we already have relationships with ourselves. How are those relationships today? And if we're what happened with me was I was literally pulled before dancing, running from boys to boys and men to men and trying like me, and then even in dancing, while I was a dancer initially, it was that much more emphasized. I literally was running, and it was when I stopped and say, okay, where are my best qualities? How do I feel? I was listening to some wise women recently, and it is all about feeling. Our bodies will tell us when something feels good, when something doesn't feel good. Our senses will tell us all of that.
So thank you for that. And I'm wondering, Susan, for the person, I would imagine there's a lot of people out there who feel pressure to please the boss, please the husband, or please the boyfriend, or please the mother or the father. That's just a hard pattern to break out of. And do you think this is related to self-love, self-appeal? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense. And it is related. And again, nothing is going to change overnight. But if there's areas of discomfort, I mean, there's nothing wrong with wanting to please a partner, because that's one of the things we do in relationships, and we want to be there. But is that pleasing harming you, or discounting you, or are you stuffing feelings? I mean, my history and all, I think, substance abuse is stuffing of feelings and stuffing of voice. So doing that to an extreme and harming yourself is where then that's where you start to be that scientist and step back and look without judgment at yourself. First of all, I mean, you're here today. Whoever you are has led an amazing life. It may not be my story, but it's your story. And then the people in your life are going to be that much more in relationship, in close intimacy with you, if you learn to speak, and you learn to speak with compassion. And I mean, there's so much about speaking up, but first and foremost, what is causing you distress? And obviously, emotional abuse or physical abuse cannot be tolerated at all.
Right. Definitely. And I think that for some people, there might be this fear that by speaking up, they're going to make somebody angry or lose a relationship. And what would you say to that person?
It depends on the relationship, and you may, and the relationships that are close, they may be distanced for a while. There may be a stepping back. But if we only get this one life, and we only get this one body, and we get to do whatever we want and can with it, then it's not only in your best interest, but also in everyone around you, because especially for women, I mean, we are role models for the young girls in our life, for our children, even for our partners and our family. So oftentimes also we imagine the worst, and that doesn't necessarily materialize. So while speaking one's voice and one's truth won't be elegant at first, most definitely, especially if we're not practiced, and will always perhaps be a challenge, it liberates not only you and empowers you, but also liberates and empowers the people around you to be their honest selves.
I love
Does that answer the question?
Yeah, it does. I love it. I love it. Thank you. So you've brought up at least once that I can remember, talk about being a victim. I think I brought it up with respect to myself too. But can we talk about being a victim for a minute, or victims?
Yeah.
Um, so, if somebody really wants to be a scientist and look at themselves, do you have suggestions, you know, that might help them analyze whether they are stuck in a victim mentality that could be affecting a lot of things in their lives?
Sure. Someone with a victim mentality would always feel something is done to them. And I'll use myself as an example, even. For instance, um, recently I saw a woman who I thought that I was friends with, and I had called her twice, and I saw her someplace I didn't imagine to see her, and immediately I was hurt. And it's like, oh, my feelings were hurt, and I felt a disconnect, and um, I had to sit with that for a while until finally I got to the place of thinking, okay, it's probably not about me. We're all super busy. Maybe she's going through something that I need to reach out to her and just offer that. And with that short example then, and I mean, and that took a couple days. It didn't happen
Yeah.
right away. In the future, hopefully it'll happen faster. Um, but the perpetual victim won't get to that place. Um, and we'll be angry. I mean, anger and resentment comes when we don't see the gifts we have, just by the very fact that we have bodies and that we're breathing and alive, and we can always find something positive to focus on, and that's where the whole essence actually of building self-appeal comes from, is building the positive, nurturing relationship with your body and mind, and just always looking for that positive thing, and then trying to realize it's not about us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for that. So, for the people who are in a relationship with the perpetual victim, is it our job to tell somebody, hey, you're a victim, or should we just let it go and let them come to that realization on their own? What do you think about that?
That's tough.
Yeah.
We can't tell other people. Sometimes we can't tell them anything.
Yeah.
um, and certainly if there's someone we're super close to, uh, us voicing that might just get a negative feedback, a backlash, anger directed at us. I think the piece of that,
Sorry
oh,
about that. I thought I took that out.
or that could be mine, I'm not sure. The piece of that is, if we see, the really beautiful thing is when we actually work on ourselves, even the people around us, just because they're exposed to us, will shift if they're people we want to keep in our life. I mean, if I'm dating someone and it's a new relationship, or 6 months down the road I suddenly realize I'm with a perpetual victim, then I may want to look at that and not choose to stay in that. In a marriage or something long term that you want to be in, or that you have history and responsibility with, like children, then it's worth it to give a little more time and work on yourself, because the compassion that you build for yourself will then extend. And it's my experience that with my clients, and even in my own life, people in my life and with clients who don't do any work still end up just shifting. So you can tell someone they're a victim all day long, but if they don't feel it, they're not going to see it.
Yeah. Perfect. Okay. Well, I mean, there's so much more that I could talk to you about. And there's one more question I have before we end. And, that is because a lot of the people listening do have children. Um, so what would you say to them in terms of, just encouraging the children to love themselves and voice what they're feeling, and just express when they're troubled? Do you have ideas or thoughts or recommendations?
I think everything is valid, meaning our thoughts and our feelings are valid, and having the ability and the space and the time to express them is important. So my first thought is taking the time, the time to be with our own feelings, but also the time to be with our the young people, and then allowing them to see their own beauty by feeling sensuality. As adults, we think of sensuality only with sexuality. I think this is wrong, because small children and into adolescence are connected to the world through the senses, sight, sound, smell. And that is one way that we come back to our bodies and really see how we're feeling versus how we're looking. That's the thing.
Yes.
How do we feel versus, people's opinions of us will change. How do you feel? And that's okay. And maybe this is a different way to look at that. And it's not about you. If someone is a rejection, how do you feel? What makes you feel good?
Okay. That's awesome. I love it. And that's a perfect note to end on, Susan. And how do you feel right now?
I feel good.
Me too. Me too. And, I really, I love talking to you. I feel like, well, I don't know, I just feel like you're plugged in to something really good here, and I hope that our listeners can connect to it, and I want them to be able to connect to you if they want to in the future. So can you tell everybody how they can find you and the book?
Oh, most definitely. Can I show you a picture of my book?
Absolutely. Please do.
Okay. My book, From Sex Appeal to Self-Appeal.
Beautiful book.
Thank you. It's awesome from what I hear, and I'm somewhat biased. My book is available online everywhere, Amazon, iTunes, or iBook. It is available in paperback. You can go to my website, selfappeal.com, and learn more about me and my book. I also have a special offer for your listeners, and
Please.
That is I created a DVD many years ago, 2003, and Striptease for Real Women, very woman-friendly. In that DVD, I have some body awareness and appreciation exercises, and if they go to selfappeal.com/, oh, I need to check here. Oh my gosh.
That's okay.
Oh, here it is, right in front of me, of course. Selfappeal.com /insider-podcast-special.
Special. Got it. I wrote it down.
Okay.
And it will be in the show notes. So if they go to that, they can get these self-awareness exercises.
Yes, I have 2 videos, and I'll happily send them and to turn back in and appreciate the body.
Thank you, Susan. You are beautiful inside and out, and I appreciate you sharing your time with me.
Thank you, Wendy. It's been my pleasure. I really liked it.
Thank you. And so for all you out there listening, that's going to do it for this episode of the Family Law Insider podcast. Remember, we're on your side when it matters most, and I will see you next time.